All right, let's talk about some of this top 25 nonsense. What I thought was interesting is that if you look at the AP poll and you look at the Almanac poll, which was what all the people that wrote the Almanac, us, Heat Check, 3-Man Weave,
right?
The verbal commits guys, which by the way, you could buy the link in the description below, $19.99, 600,000 words, 814 pages. Every single Division I team has 1,300 words minimum written about them. AP and the Almanac had the same top 3, different order. AP and the Almanac had the same top 12, all in a different order. And that just, it stood out to me a little bit. The other big takeaways I had, how about this? If you look at all of the rankings, all of the polls, and all of the metrics, the main ones, evanmaya.com, Bart Torvik, pull out your Torvik, Tio, and KenPom, there is no Big Ten team in the top 10 of any of them. It's the first time there's been no Big Ten team ranked in the preseason AP poll since 1977. So, Tio, talk me through a little bit. What do you see in these rankings? What do you see in these takeaways? And by the way, the Field of 68 Daily, check the link in the description. It is our newsletter. There, you can subscribe it there. You get it every morning, 8:30 a.m. coming into your inbox. They broke all of this stuff down. Really good breakdown there from Mike Miller the other day. But anyway, Tio, go ahead.
I like the Houston pick at number 1 just because of their toughness factor and Marcus Sasser coming back. The Almanac doing that. You know what? The preseason polls are preseason polls. I'm sitting here trying to count who in different conferences and everything like that. It's a lot of what we already know. I mean, the ACC could potentially be top heavy, or they could have a lot of players just depending on who you talk, or they could have a lot of different teams depending on who you talk to. Big 12 is going to be excellent. We're going to talk about them later. I mean, I'm not really sure that the preseason polls, they are what they are. It's kind of like my preseason polls. Like we're just guessing, right? Like I'm not really sure what we should.
I don't know about you. I'm not guessing.
Well,
I can see the future. Haven't you seen?
Yeah, you and Greg Waddell. You and Greg Waddell. You guys see the future.
Exactly. No, I just the most interesting thing was I think that there's 2 very clear tiers at the top, Fanta.
Yes.
I think that the top 3 is obvious, and if you want to put Kentucky in with that the group of 3, North Carolina, Gonzaga, Houston, and Kentucky, I'm not going to push back on you on it. But I think that they would probably be the clear cut number 4 in the preseason, at least for them. And then the rest of the top 12, it would be Kansas, Baylor, Duke, UCLA, Creighton, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Texas. And I think that is very much the clear cut next tier of teams.
I agree with you. And I just think that any poll you see, it becomes clear that the Big 12 at the top is just so strong. I mean, in the AP, 4 of the top 14. And here's how difficult it was to vote Baylor or Kansas, because I do think that's a great argument today of who's going to win the Big 12 on our show. Who is going to win it, Baylor or Kansas? I think there's cases for both. And they tied in the AP poll pretty fittingly. You know, when I go down the AP, nothing shocked me per se. I mean, there's nothing in here that I looked at and said, you know, Michigan and Illinois both sliding in there at the end. That's interesting to me that the AP voters, I'm sure, look at Hunter Dickinson and look at what Michigan has brought in and say they've got enough to be a top 25 team. But I agree with that. I think Illinois guys on their best day could be like 12 or 13, and on their worst could be 35 to 40. So it's interesting to see them in the preseason poll because I think they're one of the most curious teams in the country with Terrence Shannon and with Sky Clark and with RJ Melendez, who I expect to take a leap. But there's nothing that shocked me in the AP poll. KenPom had a ton that stood out to me. Number one being Kentucky at number 1.
Your boys. Take that victory lap, Fana. Take the victory lap while you could do it. Take that victory lap.
I'm so glad that the computers of Ken Pomeroy, of Kenny Pom-Poms, like for everything that gets said negatively about Ken, I am going to be praising him for putting Kentucky at number 1. But guys, I'll leave you with this on my breakdown of the top 25 in KenPom. Creighton down at 22.
Well, there's 2 things that really stood out. Well, I guess there's a lot of things that really stood out to me.
Virginia at 5.
Virginia was ranked 5th. North Carolina was ranked 9th. Texas was ranked 2nd. Go ahead. Baylor and Kansas ranked outside of the top 8 on KenPom.
I'm sitting here.
Go ahead, Tio.
I'm looking at the Almanac top 25. Where's Virginia?
They did not make the Almanac preseason top 25. And
where's UConn?
UConn is 22nd in the Almanac. Do you think that was my influence? I had Virginia in the top 25.
I absolutely think it was your
25.
influence.
If you want to see the bigger influence on the way that this voting happened, Heat Check Media, heavy Mountain West vibes coming out of there. Look at where San Diego State is in the Almanac top 25.
Too high.
At number 13.
High, but no Virginia in the Almanac. That's it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I had them that they should be top 20. No doubt about it. I want to, but there are two things I want to ask you guys about, because the KenPom, the ratings for preseason can get a little wonky because you have to deal with transfers and you have freshmen coming in. And it's just kind of like sometimes there's little bugs in that algorithm that need 10, 12, 14 games worth of data to kind of work themselves out.
Yes.
So like I'm not too thrown by any of that. What I want to ask you about, T.O., I'm going to go to you on this one first, and Fanta, we're going to come to you on Creighton next. But T.O., Tennessee, preseason top 5 in all of the metrics that we care about.
Of course.
Evan Maya, pull out your Torvik, and KenPom. Talk to me about the Vols, man.
Well, analytically,
this isn't football. This isn't football. We don't. Hendon Hooker's not walking through that door.
Dude, first of all,
this is Rick Barnes and the Vols. This is the hoop side.
Yeah, they've been a basketball school for a while now. So, because Tennessee's football team has been so bad, but thank God they're better, because it makes it easier on my heart, because closet Tennessee football fan here. But they return everybody. Santiago Vescovi.
Just for the record, I FaceTimed T.O. after Tennessee won that game on Saturday night, and him and his son were going nuts.
Yeah,
okay. You got a pretty nice setup down there in Greenville. You got the big old flat screen on a patio outside, a little fire pit over there, a little football action going on outside. But he's sitting there watching. I FaceTime him and his son are going nuts.
Yeah, my son knows the words to Rocky Top.
Yeah, they were singing Rocky Top. That is true.
Yeah, my son knows the words to Rocky Top. Hey, here's the crazy part, and people don't realize this, how crazy Tennessee fans are. You were taught the words to Rocky Top in 2nd grade. Right alongside the Pledge of Allegiance
and the First Communion.
Yeah, bingo. But it is right there. I like that team because, one, they still return a lot. I think John Fulkerson was a really good player, but I think there was a lot of talent behind him. And I think because Rick Barnes trusted John so much, he kept him out there. Olivier Kamwa, some of these different guys are going to get a bigger role this season. And then Santiago Vescovi was the best shooter in the conference last year. As far as shots made, what do you make? 102 threes, 104 threes, something like that. And you bring him a main man, Julian Phillips, who's a bucket, who fits in well with all the other pieces that they have around, Josiah Jordan James. I could see where analytically, and that's all this is, that team would make a lot of sense because there's continuity, there's good stats, so on and so forth. Same reason Kentucky's high, right? Because you look at Oscar Tshiebwe, his stats, Severe Wheeler, what kind of shooter he was. Frederick comes back, shot 50%. That makes sense that they would be number one with all these analytics-based institutions that we're using. So there's obviously grains of salt to be put with those, because those are numbers only. There's not a whole lot. I'm sitting here and watching the game and seeing how guys fit together. But at the same time, it's reasonable to think that if you're able to quantify how these guys are going to play together, which is what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And that's always a big if. There's always the if factor, right? So that's kind of the different part about it.
I'll say this about Tennessee. I don't know how many backcourts you're going to have that are as good as or better than Zakai Ziegler and Santiago Vescovi. There's probably not 10. There may not be 5. You combine that with Josiah Jordan James and Julian Phillips in the 2 wing spots, and Olivier Kamwa, who has some very real breakout potential. If you go back and you really watch Tennessee, there was a stretch of about 8 games in January, where he was maybe their best player. When he got hurt. Was it a foot, a hand, whatever? Then he went down for the year. Maybe it was something. He got hurt, went down for the year. But bringing Kamwa in with those 2 guards and those 2 wings, that's going to be a really, really good team. Top 5 might be pushing it a little bit for me right from the jump, but they're unquestionably to me a top 10 team. Well, Fanta, Creighton, every single metric has them outside the top 20. Is that just a product of not being able to anticipate what the jump is going to be for some of these freshmen becoming sophomores?
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is what we see in a team that gave the eventual national champion Kansas all that it could handle in the round of 32 and nearly won that game. One might argue should have won that game with where they were positionally in that game. I think that what we look at from a team, Creighton was this close to losing to San Diego State in the first round. And we probably aren't talking about them in this heavy of a realm if they lose that first round game. We're probably thinking top 15, top 20, not what many people are thinking in top 10. Mm-hmm. But I think that by the same token, the metrics don't fully account for what this team has as a whole, what this team got in Baylor Shireman. And being around Creighton yesterday, you got to leave somebody off. They had 4 All Big East preseason recognitions. Guys, I did not have to ask. I didn't even ask the question. And Creighton people were coming up to me saying, hey, Trey Alexander did not get honored in the preseason. And we're telling you, Fanta, don't be stupid. T.O. was with me for one of the conversations. Yep. They said, do not be dumb. You are going to look smart with this take. I'm like, okay, hand it over. Trey Alexander will be their best, if not their second best player. They said that he will be an NBA player down the road. Now, I've walked into one Creighton practice, and I was very impressed with Alexander, but I haven't been in that facility every day, so they know it better than I do. The point, Creighton is stacked with really good pieces. They probably don't have the Big East Player of the Year, but that's actually a good thing for this team. Any given night, it could be Kalkbrenner. Any given night, it could be a different dude. They're deep. They have several different options. Offensively, McDermott's going to design a great system. I was surprised to not see them higher according to the metrics, but I think it's a combination of how close they came to Kansas and just how much they return.
Yeah,
and
my guess,
when
honestly,
we break teams down. Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I just was going to say, when we break teams down, we value returning experience and what you did that previous March. We value that very significantly.
Yeah, and they had so many freshmen last season that were playing early and were playing very, very poorly against teams like Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and other people. That's going to bring down the numbers for the entire year for Creighton, as opposed to if you just look at what they were from January on, what they were in Big East play, what they were in the last month of the season, and kind of anticipate what that jump is going to be. So they're always going to be a little bit undervalued by the metrics just because of the way that works. All right. You know what time it is, fellas.
Hey, I got to give you credit real quick before we move on. I got to give you credit, Rob, because when we were watching the Big East tournament, you're like, Trey Alexander is going to be a first round pick.
Thank you. I've been leading the Trey Alexander hype train for years. Okay,
not years. Year.
Well, actually, the reason why I'm leading the hype train is because I might have heard from a little birdie that may or may not be employed by Creighton before we interviewed Trey Alexander in like December of last year that, hey, you want to pay attention to this kid. He's going to be very, very good. The quote was, he is the best defender that we've had, the best natural defender that we've had here, including guys like Kalkbrenner and including guys like Kyrie Thomas, who was a 2-time defensive player of the year. So as soon as you saw that and then him go over, start playing point guard with those physical measurements, boom.
We're dropping our merch. We got to start calling Underwood Daddy Brad. But I'm a big pod guy.
Breaking news. The Field of 68 has an online store, and it's your one-stop shop for the latest and greatest merch in college basketball and college football. You can find shirts to support your favorite team, make fun of your rival team, or boast Field of 68 catchphrases like Daddy Brad, Cussin' and Discussin', and the Star Heels. Go to www.fieldof68.shop today and enter promo code TOUCHDOWN for 20% off at checkout.